विचार वेद lecture series supported by Fomento. Datta Govind Poiraiturkar Memorial Lecture. Speaker Dr. Trilochan Sastry. Topic: India and the World. What are our opportunities? Dr. Trilochan Sastry is a distinguished academic, social entrepreneur, and a leading voice for democratic transparency and public accountability in India. He is the chairman, founder member, and trustee of the Association for Democratic Reforms, a non-partisan organization that has for over 2 decades worked to make electoral politics more transparent by ensuring that candidates publicly disclose their criminal, financial, and educational backgrounds. He holds a B.Tech from IIT Delhi, an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and a PhD from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has taught at IIM Ahmedabad and is a professor in decision sciences at IIM Bangalore, where he also served as dean from 2008 to 2011. He has been a visiting professor at institutions including MIT, the International University of Japan, and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Beyond academia, he founded the Center for Collective Development, which has helped thousands of small farmers build cooperatives, and Farm Veda, a social enterprise that shares value directly with farmer producers. A recipient of the Satyendra K. Dubey Memorial Award and a distinguished alumnus award from IIT Delhi, Dr. Sastry continues to advance electoral reform, informed citizenship, and accountable governance.
Good evening and namaste, and very kind thanks to Gomant Vidya Niketan, Mr. Salil, Raj, and so many other wonderful people for inviting me here. And this is the first time I'm coming to Goa for non-tourism purpose. So I'm very happy to be here. And a few things I wanted to say, because I have been studying about this organization whatever I could. It is really impressive that it has been continuing for more than 100 years. In India, organizations don't last for 100 years. And also, the number of distinguished people who have come here over the years. I don't know whether I am qualified to speak like some of the great people you have invited. And also I noticed that the members that we met, they are highly accomplished, educated, some are businessmen, professors, etc. And I'm still wondering why they hold this lecture series, because they are all well-read and well-educated on their own. But anyway, thank you very much. It shows a lot of humility for inviting others to listen, because सबको सब कुछ मालूम है, बाहर से सुनने की जरूरत नहीं है. So, coming to today's topic, it is a little grand, but the reason we are discussing this is India and the world, what are the opportunities? For the last several years, people like me, we go around the country, interact with people, give talks, listen to talks, participate in seminar, conferences, etc. But some ideas are not being discussed at all. And what is the role of India in the world? How can we improve ourselves? How can we become something better than what we are? It's a little more than we can chew, but whatever, based on reading and work over the last so many decades. So let me start with one thing about the Indian history. In the 17th century, India's GDP was about 25% of the world's GDP. That role has been taken over now by the United States. India had a trade surplus. That means we were exporting more than importing. And also, the standard of living in India was better than China, better than many parts of Western Europe, and for some period even better than UK. After that, of course, the British came and a lot of things happened. So why I'm mentioning this is that it's not that we have to go back to 3000 years, Vedas or something like that. Even up to 17th century, we were doing quite well. So the big question is that how can we recapture that today in a positive way? So I will talk a little bit about that. These are very preliminary ideas. I'm sure a lot of discussion and much more thought has to go into it, but based on my understanding, I'm saying this. But what has changed from the 17th century, obviously, is that the world has completely changed from that time. So so when we think about how to take India forward, we have to have a clear look at the situation today. We all know this, but I'm just putting out some numbers. Within India, there are 60 crore migrants. India has a population of 140 crore, almost one per family. I am coming from Bangalore. It is full of migrants from North India, right from Panwala, auto rickshaw driver, construction workers, to people who are doing carpentry, to IT software and professional services, to go to Kerala also. Now, one question is that India has changed so much. 60 crore migrants. I'm sure there are migrants in Goa. I'm not aware of it. There must be many migrants from outside, particularly because it's a prosperous place. So labor will come from outside. What does it do to our country? What does it do to the people? How does it change the economy? We have to think, and I will try to mention something. Second thing is this thing, which luckily I have put on silent. India has 1.2 billion mobile phones, 120 crore. There are 95 crore internet users, not only in English but in all languages. There are 85 crore WhatsApp users. We are competing head and head with China in the number of users of all these. Now, there are positive things to social media, but there are many negative things. It is causing confusion, fake news, and bombardment. Now it is causing stress. So the world is changing, and technology has entered every aspect of our life. It's a fact. So that is one thing we must recognize when we talk about how to take our country forward. So the question is, in this change, and I can go on apart from migration and technology, there is a few things about India which need to be pointed out, which we are often not thinking. To the best of my understanding, India is the most diverse country in the world. All the major religions of the world are here. Because Hinduism is the major religion, but Islam, Christianity, Jews, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, everybody is here in India. We have the most diverse languages in India. So this is the drama I do in class. So if you take out rupee note, you will see that there are many scripts here. These are you can see for yourself. Most people in India don't know what this is. This is all saying 500 rupees in different languages. We don't know what languages they are. I have tried to figure it out. It is in English alphabetical order from Assamese to Urdu. Every script is there, which has got a script. But apart from these 15 plus 2 Hindi and English 17 constitutional languages, we have 6,000 dialects. Here we have Konkani, we have Tudu, we have tribal languages, Bhojpuri, and you go on and on. So some people have documented thousands of dialects and thousands of jatis. And all the major races of India, from the Aryan to the Dravidian to the Negroid to the Australoid and Mongoloid, every major race. So we have all the races, all the religions, hundreds and thousands of languages and hundreds and thousands of jatis. So we are the most diverse nation in the world by far. There is no country that comes close to it. Now this is our situation, and of course we have a history also. What do we do is the point. I don't know how much time I have. Can I take another 25 minutes? Yeah. Okay. So we have to think about it. I will mention two people who had a vision for India who I admire, but you need not admire them. One is Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, he had very clearly written about a vision for India, and the other one is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. So many other great people have also said things about India. So when we talk about progress in India, should it be based on our own Indian culture, or should it be based on some abstract notions? That is one question which you should all also think about. And another thing is that should we all as people work together to make this country great, or should we wait for some leader or government to do it? That is another question. So what is the way that we do? So I want to look at some hard facts. So in the overview, first is, where does India stand internationally? Because data is available now everywhere. And what can we do to make progress? So let me share some things that around the world, I have just taken comparison with India, China and US. I mean, it's very difficult to in a short talk to compare with every country in the world. Where are we compared to them? And what are the drivers of so-called economic progress today in the world? Is clearly science, technology, and behind science and technology, education. So where do we stand with respect to education compared to the rest of the world? In India, agriculture and manufacturing are still there. Agriculture is a major thing. But there also other countries are introducing a lot of technology. So where are we on that? And in all that, what is our outcome in terms of per capita income, GDP, impact on the climate, etc. You people live in a beautiful climate in Goa, but you know what is going on in Delhi and in Uttarakhand, where the forests are being cut, the rivers are flooding, the landslides, and they are building 8-lane highways. So what is the impact on the environment? So all these things are outcomes. Now, if we look at the international standing, first let us acknowledge the good news that India is the 4th largest economy in the world, and the extreme poverty in India has come down to about 5.3%, who are apparently living on less than $3 a day. And 5.3% when I was young seemed impossible. That is extreme poverty. In general poverty, about 28%, but it is down from about 70% in 1947. 70% of India was considered poor. Now it is down to 28%. And literacy has improved from about 15% in 1947 to about 80%. And so on and so forth. We are doing well in IT software services. Goa is doing very well in tourism. So there are good things which are happening. But if we want India to be respected around the world, and if we want to feel good about our nation, we must have a benchmark. So the way of thinking was influenced a little bit by Vivekananda, who said that this Kupa Banduk attitude, that we are frog in the well, and we don't care about what is going on in the world, that kind of idea is again coming dangerously back to India. This great Vivekananda, when he went to America and came back, the Pandits in Dakshineshwar were not allowing him to enter the temple. This is to Kalapani, you went across the ocean, now you have become polluted. That kind of idea is still there in India, not invented here. So therefore, going back to Vivekananda, we must look at what is going on around the world, and in our own way we must grow. The Rig Veda says, Ano Bhadra Kritovo Yantu Vishwataha. May noble thoughts come to us from all directions. The Rig Veda says it, but we don't follow. It says, no, not invented here, Indian, not Indian, this and that, but knowledge is universal. So looking at the comparison between other countries and India, the per capita income in India, a rough estimate, is about 2.3 lakh rupees per year, which is about $2,750. In nominal terms, those of your economists will understand what I'm saying in actual rupee or dollar terms. So we are at $2,750 per capita. China is at $13,200. The per capita income in China is 4.8 times of India. Of course, America is way ahead. It is 32 times of India, much bigger. And then now they say, no, 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 this is not correct. You must look in purchasing power parity, which broadly means that what is the quality of life I can have in India with this amount of money versus that, etc. So, which is different from the actual, because prices are much cheaper in India, for example, compared to China and the US. In per capita income terms, a PPP, purchasing power parity terms, India is at $12,000, China is at 30,000. That is, it is 2.5 times of India, and America is still more or less the same, 32 times. But China is the world's second largest economy in nominal terms. In purchasing power parity, it is the number one country in the world. Highest GDP in terms of PPP is in China. Now, in 1949, they were behind us. Even up to 1990, they were slightly behind us. What has happened there? Now, people say, oh, communism, dictatorship. It's not as simple as that. Then we have this Human Development Index, which is a composite not only about money, but what is the human life like in India. So they say that it depends on health, education, and longevity. How many years you live. So composite measure, that HDI. So every year they give a ranking. It changes a little bit here and there, but this is indicative. India among the nations is ranked 130. China is at 78 and US is at 17. So while we have made a lot of progress, because we ignore international comparisons, we think, oh, हम अपने गली में राजा हैं, but when you look at it internationally, there's a long way to go. I mean, let us be very frank about it. Now, another thing that has happened due to the wealth, due to the way we have grown, I'm not totally against it, but what has happened is, in India has one of the highest inequalities in the world. You know, the economists and the government will say, no, 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 it has come down, Gini index, bhaad mein jaye. Let me tell you some basic numbers. The top 1%, most of us are in the top 1%, we own 40% of the wealth of the country, which is actually more than 1.5 crores. That is what they define. Top 1% of India is 1.5 crores. किसी के पास एक छोटा मोटा घर या फ्लैट होगा तो 1.5 करोड़ का तो है ही वो. And that is our social circle. I don't know the chaps who are serving tea and coffee, whether they are worth 1.5 crores, I have no idea. So 1% own 40% of the wealth. The top 10% have 65% of the wealth. And the bottom 50% of India have only 7% or less than 7, but 6.5% of the wealth. 50% of the people. So there's a huge inequality. That is in terms of wealth, which is ownership of assets, land, shares, fixed deposits, whatever, businesses. In terms of income, what you get, the top 1% in India receive 21% of the total income. So, for example, to give you a hard number, in IIM, when people graduate, if they get a job of 15 lakhs on graduation, they feel very unhappy. But 15 lakhs is 7 times the per capita income of India. But we feel very unhappy. अरे कम से कम 50 लाख 1 करोड़ हांगकांग में जॉब मिलता तो 1 करोड़ का मिलता है 1.5 करोड़. So that's how the inequality. So we live in separate bubbles of our own, and we are not well informed about what is happening to the rest. And India can't become great unless everybody becomes great, or many more people become great. It can't be great based on a few people. And the bottom 50% of India gets 15% of the total income. And there are huge disparities. So Raj told me while driving from the airport that Goa has one of the highest per capita incomes in the country. So I'm very happy to be here. But if you go to other places, in other parts of the country, particularly in North India, the income is even less than that. That's why there is a great migration from north to south. Right up to Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra, I'm sure Goa. Everybody from Rajasthan, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bengal, Assam, वो सब भागे भागे नीचे क्यों जा रहे हैं कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर काम के लिए? Because there is prosperity here and there is some income there और उधर कुछ नहीं है. So there is a lot of regional disparity. So the national level statistics, which compared to international don't look so good, it is hiding even greater issues in certain regions of the country which are even worse off. Now, how do we get out of this is one of the questions. There is no going back to 17th century and while I respect Gandhiji, Charkha and all that, we have to be 21st century. At least that is my view, with some caveats which I will mention. So science and technology is the driver of economic progress today. We are in a knowledge economy. So where do we stand? Now all these smartphones, are they made in India? Are they made in China? They're not even made in America. And so on. So China is now investing $138 billion. I don't even know what that means. In new technologies. And about 15 billion in what they call quantum computing. Now you must be all hearing that quantum computing is and artificial intelligence, AI is the new thing. And this is the highest investment by any government in the world. Because in the US they believe in private sector. The US investment in these technologies is maybe equal to China's or higher, but it is not coming through the government. The Indian government is investing 0.75 billion. China is investing 138 billion. Now, where is the money going to come from? We'll leave that. Now, for example, biotech, pharma industry is a big driver of growth because people like me and many sitting in the front row, जिनके बाल सफेद हो गए हैं, they're all crossing 60, 65, and old age related issues, which include diabetes and blood pressure and if you are unlucky, Parkinson's and cancer and Alzheimer's and dementia and so many things are there. So now they are doing a lot of research to develop cures for that. So biotech startup investments in 2025-26, the year that we are going through, in the USA was $16 billion. In China it is 20 billion. China is investing more than US in startups. And in India it is $0.16 billion. So there is a lot of hype which goes out into the social media maybe from the government or I don't know whoever is doing the hype. But these are all publicly available data. And like going back to Vivekananda, the Kupa Mandu ki hum to great hai. I'm great hai, I don't deny it. But then what about the other people? How are you compared to that? Now the type of economy also, like I think Raj Bhai was telling while driving that another speaker who's going to come tomorrow or day after, he's Goanese but teaches in National University of Singapore, Rajat I think. So we were chatting in the airport just now today and he was saying that the highest per capita income in India is perhaps in Goa and such a high capita income state should not be depending only on tourism. They should actually go for high tech. I tend to agree with him because there is enough surplus and education to do that. So what is the type of economy that say India, China and US have? In the US, 80% of a very huge GDP, gigantic GDP is in high tech and high tech services, healthcare, technology, etc., etc. So if you look at the top 5 companies of the US, Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, Meta, I don't know, whatever, Amazon, and there must be one more which I missed. All of them are about $3.5 to $4 trillion. I don't know what $1 trillion means. And they are the drivers of the economy there. That's just an example at the top, but there are so many other, all the technologies. If somebody says something, if I want to check, what do I do? Google करता हूँ. तो Google कहाँ से आया? वो अमेरिका से. They are making money on that. So 80% of the American economy is based on high tech and then little bit on real estate and finance. In China, it is made up of high tech manufacturing electronics. So all the American companies which are giants, their chips are made in Taiwan and in China. Now Trump is trying to stop that, but for business reasons he may not be able to stop it. So China is doing high-end manufacturing. Chips, electronics, Taiwan is also doing. Infrastructure. What are we doing? 55% of our economy, which is quite a large, is based on IT services. It is good. We should be proud of the IT services, but it is going with AI and all. Khatam ho raha hai. Because now all the great companies, they are the low end. China is at a higher end. America is at a still higher end. And 50% or more of our population is in agriculture. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. It's a fact. And they earn only 11% of the GDP. So all these people who are migrating from different parts of the country to Goa and South India and etc., they are from farming families because agriculture is not working. तो कोई टैक्सी चला रहा है, कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्किंग कर रहा है, कोई झाड़ू पोछा कर रहा है. These are all because of agriculture is not paying. So the structure of our economies are different. US is in high tech. China is investing 138 billion to become high tech, and in some of the technologies like AI, they are actually ahead of the United States. You can read and see. And we are not even thinking about these issues. So that is the point. Now, education I want to mention partly because I was a professor, and the driver of a knowledge economy is a large number of well-educated young people. There is no other way. If you look at Ireland, for example, Ireland has the second highest GDP in the world. Actually, it is highest because the other one is one of those Luxembourg or Cayman Islands or one of those kind of countries. Actually, Ireland, it used to be a middle income country. It has become number 2 highest capita GDP. So then I start wondering, kaisa hua? Education. Investment in quality education, not only in some IIT or this thing. For the majority of the young people, they invested hundreds of millions of dollars in education, science and technology. So we are ignoring that. So here is some statistics. 50% of Indian youth apparently today have finished high school. That's what the government says. That is accepted. In China it is 77%, in USA it is 93%. But this 50% hides a lot of things. Because if we go to Kerala, you will find that 90% have finished high school. So what about the other parts of the country? It must be much less. Now skilled workforce. So when China is doing manufacturing, and our government is also saying make in India, you have to do manufacturing, whether it is MSME or large. For that you require trained workers. Plumbers, electricians, those who have gone to polytechnics or whatever and they know they have been trained. In India, according to the government, less than 2% are skilled workforce. In China, it is 50%. China has invested tens of billions of dollars in the last few decades on skilling its workforce. So that is at the vocational level. So I just leave you with a question. Without this investment in education and skilling, is India going to be able to compete with all these countries? Is it possible? ये सब make in India हो सकता है without doing this? नहीं हो सकता. Because we are 2%, they are 50%. Now you look at the higher education. So little perspective on that. Some of you may be aware. Sorry if it is a repetition. The great scientific innovations and technological innovations, you can trace their roots back to the great universities. So I'll give you an example on modern times. You must have all heard of DeepSeek, which is a Chinese technology on AI, and people are floored by it. It came out of Zhejiang University. I had never heard of Zhejiang University. It is number 3 or 4 after Peking and Shanghai. And Zhejiang University stated objective on their website is that we want to be like Stanford. What is so special about Stanford University? They are the hub of startups. So out of 50 or 200 startups that have come out of Zhejiang, the most famous is this one, this DeepSeek, which is ahead of many of the American AI engines. So that the point is that investment in high quality education of 21st century type is very much required. My experience around the world and in India is that India has a talent. Indians are very intelligent, There are many smart young people. We are failing them by not giving. So in India, for example, estimates vary. Something like $15 billion or 1 lakh crores is spent by Indian students going abroad and paying fees, mostly to America and Europe. But you will see in 5 years they'll go to China also. The best. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? If you can get a so now you look at where do we stand in international education. So there are many rankings. I'll just mention one ranking called QS ranking. So every year they come out with a ranking of the top universities of the world. Of course, USA dominates, no doubt. But where do we stand compared to China in the top 100? China has 5 universities in the top 100, and now Hong Kong is part of China, which is another 5. So they have 10 universities in the top 100. India, unfortunately, has 0. 0 universities in the top 100. And one of the important measures of high quality education is research output largely based on science. हमारा 0 है. And I am also guilty because I also was a professor. So you can ask, what have you done? First, that is one is the quality. The other is the scale. Our population has now gone ahead of China a little bit. The Chinese population is coming down, and ours is also coming down, but not that much. So we are the most populated country in the world ahead of China. Now you look at the number of, so we are just looking at science and technology at the highest level, and the origin, the Janma Bhumi of this highest level science and technology are the universities. After that, they translate into companies and so on and so forth, because without that university, you think it will not happen. So what is the scale at which they are doing it? So I'll give you some numbers. Peking University, they have kept it Peking, they have not made it Beijing, has over 40,000 students. And it is ranked number 14 in the world. Tsinghua University, which is considered very top in science and technology, ranked 17, has 62,000 or more students. And Zhejiang, which came up with DeepSeek, has more than 50,000 students. In India, all these IITs and NITs, they don't have more than 5 or 10,000 students. For a country whose population is bigger than China's. So if you look at the top 10 Chinese universities which are ranked in the top 100 worldwide, they have 400,000 seats. 4 lakh बच्चों को पढ़ा रहे हैं. India में 1.35 lakh, 1/3 or 1/4 of that. And in course, I am also from an IIT and they are good institutions. I'm not, but in terms of ranking, none of them are even in the top 100. So we are educating 1/3 the students of China in institutions which are not in the top 100. And China is educating 3 times the number in institutions which are of scale and quality. So we don't see a vision from the government or the private sector to build these world-class universities. There is nothing which prevents us. There is enough money out there. There are people who are willing to support. Students are paying fees. We will have to find some method of those who can't afford but are very brilliant how to. But we don't have a national will of doing that. And without investing in world-class, world-scale higher education in science and technology, कुछ भी policy कर लो, कुछ नहीं होगा. There is no other way, because that is the bedrock. And again, if you go back to ancient India, you keep reading about Takshashila and Nalanda. People used to come from China and Greece to India to those universities to study. Now we have made museums out of them. Political museums ko bana diya. It's not that we don't have intellectual depth or we never had. But we are not focusing on that today. That is the point that I am making. So, education, science and technology. How much time do I have? Another 5 minutes? Okay. Actually, if it is possible, I would love to hear back from you either just now or
I would like, after you finish.
yeah, and also you can connect later, because this is a collective effort. It is not one person's ideas. So education has to improve. Skill training has to improve so that the manufacturing improves. I will close with behind all this science and technology, is there an Indian way of doing it? because for whatever reason, the people of India are rooted in our own culture, which is a good thing. How do we take it forward? First thing you find when you go to other countries compared to India, because many of you have also traveled, keep thinking what is it? It's not only about the roads and the infrastructure. There is a psychological issue called trust. Trust is very low in India. मेरे अलावा सब लोग चोर हैं. And government also thinks the same thing. Government think people चोर हैं, and people think कि government चोर है. But it is not true in other countries. It's not true in other countries. There is a high level of trust. Can you do all these wonderful things without trust? So how do we rebuild that trust is one issue. I will not speak about it today because that's another subject. But in a constructive way, not by finding fault with everybody, but we need to rebuild the trust. This Gomantak Vidya Niketan is a wonderful example of trust. It is operating on trust. It should be based on Indian culture. Then I will close with, again, as I said, I started with Vivekananda and Gandhi. So Vivekananda was very clear that national development has to be based on self-belief. He used to call it man-making. By man he meant women also. मतलब कि make people stand on their own feet. And his quote, which I like very much, which I have given here is, all the wealth of the world cannot help one village if the people are not taught to help themselves. Our approach, अरे तू गरीब है, तेरे को 5,000 रुपए देता हूँ इलेक्शन के पहले, 10,000 रुपए देता हूँ, तेरे को ये फ्री में देता हूँ, वो फ्री में देता हूँ. To some extent it's okay, but now it has become a joke. And that self-reliance, I'll tell you this self-reliance, how badly it has been hurt. For 20 years we have been working in rural areas, including actually now in some parts of Maharashtra. And during one of the elections 5-10 years ago, this was in Telangana, maybe it was part of Andhra at that time before it split, I don't know. The government announced that we will give 5 kg of rice free to the tribals and 5 kg of rice to non-tribals at 1 rupee and which announced here. So I was in a tribal village, we were talking about various issues about farmer cooperative. One guy stood up and said, ये गवर्नमेंट चेसे तप्पू सर इन तेलुगु से मीन ये गवर्नमेंट जो कर रहा है वो गलत है. मैंने कहा क्यों? इसे हम भिखारी थोड़ी है, हम तो किसान हैं, हमको क्यों फ्री में दे रहे? So that feeling of self-respect is there in the people, but again and again we are attacking it. And it goes again what Vivekananda says, that all the wealth in the world poured into one village cannot develop that village, cannot make that village prosperous unless the people are made self-reliant. So that is the psychology. First we have to rebuild trust with everybody, government, people, this religion, that religion, because we have to work together to make this country great. It has to be based on trust. And then this idea of self-belief, it was always there. It's not that it was not there, we have forgotten it. I mean, if you go back to the Shruti, it says, Shrinvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra, Suno Dunya Wala Tum Amrit Ke Putra Ho. The Upanishad is saying that. Aham Brahmasmi, etc., that we are all potentially divine. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि हमारे में सेल्फ बिलीफ नहीं है. अगर मुझ में भगवान है तो मेरे को किस चीज का डर है? That idea is there, but it has to be brought out again. That self belief, and based on that self belief, trust. We don't trust others because we don't believe in ourselves. Sometimes I feel. जब मुझे अपने आप के ऊपर विश्वास और वो नहीं है, तो दूसरों ऊपर कैसे होगा? Because I don't have that confidence. So we need to build that. That is the psychological basis for all that science, technology, etc. That is a view that I have. Of course, I may be wrong on that. So that's what I wanted to say. And if I have spoken too much, my apologies. And once again, a big thanks to Mr. Salil and this organization for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Thank you.